Good morning, brothers of Christ. Welcome to another testimonial interview. I know it's been a while. Today we will be interviewing Sister Megan. Quick information about the ministry here. If you'd like to follow us, we are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, X, YouTube, Law of Christ Ministries. We have 3 weekly studies: Tuesday nights, 6 p.m., Thursday night, 6:30 p.m., and Sunday mornings. We will be doing it in person and online at the same time. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Sister Megan for her interview.
Good
Hey,
morning.
Megan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for letting me do it a little bit later. I didn't have to sleep
No
in most of the.
problem. Not
So,
everybody is an early bird like me.
no, 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 no. I'm definitely not early. But no, but it was good though. I got up, went to go do my walk, my cardio, and I'm ready to go now. That's why I
Nice.
had texted you. Okay, so let's get going. So just briefly tell me a little bit about yourself, just your basics, where you're from, how long you been a believer, do you have any kids, are you married, a little bit about your job, if you want to share a little bit about your church, just some basic quick information um, about yourself.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Southern California, born and raised. Grew up in a Christian home. It was just me and my mom for the first 8-ish years of my life, something like that. Until she got remarried, and I have twin sisters who are 10.5 years younger than me that I grew up with. Um, Rocky relationship with my dad my whole life,
Oh,
but that never affected the way that I saw or was able to relate to God because of my mom's example of faith and her relationship with him.
hmm.
And let's see, I met my late husband when we were in high school. We were each other's first and only everything. Being here in California, we used to like to refer to ourselves as that unicorn couple, the kind of thing you
Uh-huh.
don't really see out here anymore.
Yeah.
But he was a wonderful, loving, godly, generous man, and we had a beautiful relationship. And I lost him 3 years ago to a sudden and unexpected heart attack. We had moved to North Texas. We'd been there
But
for
forgive me,
most
forgive me.
of.
I don't want to cut you off there. We'll get to that. Just we'll get to
Gotcha,
that.
no
Try to
problem.
promise. So just
And
really quick. So I mean, what do you do? Do you have any kids? Do
no
you know
kids.
your job? Your church? A little bit information.
Yeah, no kids. We tried, but it just never happened.
Okay.
And I work full time office job, admin, assistant, accounting type stuff. It is for a small company locally. And I go to a wonderful church here in La Mirada that I absolutely love. I've been there for about 5 months, almost 5 months, and it's been great. God's really blessed me there.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Cool. So let's take it all the way back to your childhood. You grew up in California, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you lived always in La Mirada?
Uh, Whittier, La Mirada area. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So uh, see if I got this straight. So from your biological father and mother is just you, right? You don't
Yeah.
have it.
My,
Okay.
my dad left us when I was about 10 months old.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, okay.
Yeah.
So now walk me through your, let's say, from what you can remember up to like the elementary phase in your life. What kind of kid
Mm.
would you say you were?
I was I was one of those kids that actually liked hanging out with the adults and listening to the adult conversation. Probably because I was an only child for the first 10.5 years of my life. I was always very imaginative, always reading, more indoors than outdoors. Um, my mom and I have always been very close, but I don't have hardly any memories of my childhood. Like, I have vague impressions of things.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I remember the people who have been around forever. But as far as like specific actual memories, most of that is a complete blank. except for a few individual things here and there, up until about fifth grade.
Okay.
That's when my solid continuous memory starts. And I have no idea why. Like, I never went through anything traumatic, never had any injury or anything like that, nothing to explain it. I just simply don't remember.
Okay.
So
All
most of
right.
my
So
childhood is a blank.
okay. From what you remember, your first 10 years, you were more of a I don't want no, I don't want to say a loner, but you like you said you'd rather be more with the adults and kind of hear
Yeah,
what they
I
like to say.
gravitated more towards adults. I
So
mean, I had friends I could get along with other kids. Like, I remember having a few friends here and there. I was always involved in church and of course at school, so I was around other kids. But I also enjoyed the company of adults and being
yeah,
around adults too.
okay. Now I'm assuming that well, what you could remember of the age, I'm assuming you understood it. It was just you and your mom. Did
Yeah.
did did you ever ask around that time, like, where's your dad or anything like that?
Well, my dad was still in my life. It was just not constant or consistent. And the older I got, the more so that was the case. So, like, when I was little, I would spend, every other Christmas break with him, part of every summer break with him, every other Easter, like things like that. But he was always late picking me up and
Mm,
things like that, and like plans would change unexpectedly, and I never was able to have a close relationship with him like I wanted. He just wasn't emotionally available to me in that way. He also remarried again. They had a daughter, so I have another sister who's about 7.5 years younger than me, and she and I have never been close either. But the older I got, the less I saw my dad,
oh,
and the
man.
harder that relationship got.
Yeah.
So I didn't really need to ask questions. Um, I kind of did of him from time to time, and he would always just brush it off and not give me a real answer. Um, but yeah, it was
Okay.
hard.
Yeah.
And he
Okay.
died when I was in high school.
Oh. Okay. So you never had a chance to reconcile.
No,
Yeah. Okay. Walk me through now from age 10 to about your junior high. Did your mom remarry?
she did. She did.
Okay.
She remarried, and
And how
she
did
and
you
my
feel about
stepdad.
that?
Um, he's a good guy. He's always done his best to take care of me, but we've never been close either. The older I've gotten, the better it's gotten. And especially recently, since moving home, things have been better than they ever were before. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it's kind of been more like he's just somebody that's always been present, but that I've never been close with, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. And again, so growing up without the father figure, I mean, it seems like you've been growing up with no type of male, you know, relationship or that male figure in your life. And how did that affect your life around the middle school time? Did it
Uh,
affect you at all? Did you change as a
yeah,
person as you started
of
getting
course
older?
of course it affected me. It's always
Yeah.
affected me, but God's always been good and faithful to take care of me. He's always put people in my life to fill that role, but not in the way that I would have chosen or wanted. Like, I wanted somebody, like one solid, steady person that would be there consistently through the years. I
Mm-hmm.
never got that. But at each stage of my life, there was always somebody filling that
Mm-hmm.
role for me. Like when I was a kid and in junior high and part of high school and stuff, my uncle, my dad's younger brother, was really there for me and intentionally spent time with me. And like even through college, we'd get together semi regularly and stay connected. And he was there for me in that way. And then through, like there would be pastors or volunteers at church and in the youth ministry that I got close to at different times through junior high. up through college that were there for me and mentored me, and kind of provided that type of support. My best friend's dad in high school at one point became one of those mentors, role models for me. Um, and then when I met Bill and he and I started dating, his dad really kind of adopted me and treated me just as well as his own
Oh, okay.
daughters.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So
So
yeah,
yeah,
there's
there were
always
male
been
figures
somebody
that kind of
there.
stepped
Yeah,
up to.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. So I know we live in a different world now. Junior high kids nowadays are not the same. Probably when you and I were in junior high.
yeah.
Would you, most of the time by that time they're already kind of getting into trouble, doing some stuff that they shouldn't be doing. When you were in junior high, did you start to dabble in some sinful activities that you shouldn't be doing, or was your faith strong enough where no, you were able to resist any?
No, there that wasn't really ever a part of my life. I wasn't ever even tempted to go exploring into anything like that. God kept me on the straight and narrow, tethered to him pretty closely. It was in junior high that I started really owning my relationship with him for myself, not,
Okay.
my mom's coattails, and started studying my Bible on my own and praying more on my own, and um like just all of my hurt and pain and confusion over my relationship with my dad not being what I wanted it to, I poured all that out to God, um and he was there for me. He comforted me. He helped me through it, provided people in my life to help me through it. So yeah, that was when my walk with God started growing closer.
Junior high, around junior high.
Yeah, around junior high, and I've never really backed off from that.
All right. So before we continue that, what did what did your mom do growing up that even through the midst of not having a father figure and I'm assuming you lived around a lot of unbelievers and everything, but you never fell for that like most kids do nowadays. Seems like you peer pressure or temptation to go a different route. What was it that your mom did? Obviously, very successful, that kept you with God. Now, obviously, all the honor and glory to God, but your mom had a big part in it. So, what was she doing, raising you, that got you to stay in that straight path? What would you say?
Well, we were always in church, always around other Christians, fellow believers. And she would pray with me and we would talk about God. And she just lived out her relationship with Him in front of me and was somebody that I could always go to with whatever I was feeling and thinking and going through. And loved me, and even in things like discipline, which, like every kid, I needed that too, but like she would always come to me, and after, it wasn't just the punishment, it was, okay, do you understand what happened, do you understand why this was wrong, and like walking me through it, and that reconciliation of the relationship afterwards, and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Uh, as I'm hearing this, I'm reminded of my interview with Dale. 95% of the people that I've ever interviewed, you and Dale have been the only one that had parents that did it the right way. And getting to know
Mm,
you and Dale, I see the difference versus someone like me or other people that I've interviewed where it was just a disaster from the beginning.
mm,
And it's like, wow, this is the fruit. This shows that when you do it God's way, children like you and Dale, you guys grow up to be godly people, how you guys are,
thank
with
you.
less. I mean, we all had went through stuff, but not having to suffer like people like me, how I grew up, and other people where you had to go some really hard times and abuse and blah blah blah, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and that's why I asked. I wanted to know what your mom did to keep you
Yeah,
that way, because nowadays, I mean, from my personal experience with I see with my kids, and just the generation we live in now, the junior high age now, the drugs, the suicide, the mental illness.
yeah,
I mean, you see how it is nowadays, right?
yeah,
And I think back, man, this starts at the home.
yeah,
We
it really
people
does.
like us. not meaning you, like my family, including myself, we failed miserably. We failed our kids because look at how they are now. They're sexually active, taking drugs, trying to drink, suicide, just all kinds of depression, and and I'm just like, wow. It's refreshing to hear this, like people like you and Dell, because it I hope people will hear this and say, you know what, when we do it God's way, there's less chance of your kids growing up to having to suffer like people like me and my kids and other people. So that's awesome. I really appreciate that, and it just kind of breaks my heart, makes me regret the mistakes that I made, and I wish I can go back to fix it. But anyway, it's not about me. But yeah, okay, cool. So we're in junior high. All right, now let's move transition forward. Now let's go to the high school phase. So this is the part where even the great Dale went through some drama there during the high school. So the high school is really rough. So walk me through high school. How were you? How was your faith? Did you get into trouble? Did you, this time start meeting boys? And it's a tough time. So
I
I'm
was
sure you had your
never the
little
girl
struggles
that the
here and
guys
there.
were interested in.
Okay, all
I
right,
never was. I didn't really deal with that or experience any of that until I met Bill. And he
okay,
and I were just friends for a year, a little over a year before we actually started dating. High school was when the rose-colored glasses I was looking through at my dad started coming off. I started realizing who he was, how our relationship was, why it was so difficult, seeing that he just couldn't and probably wasn't ever going to be who I needed him to be. And that really hurt. That was a big struggle. But again, I took it to God. I poured my heart out to God, and he always provided the right people there to guide
yeah,
me through that, to comfort me, to help me. Um, and then I was never like the social butterfly type. My group of friends was always very small. Some people here, some people there.
yeah,
And I was the kid that would go hang out in the teacher's room at lunch. How there were some teachers that would have their room open for a space for kids to come and hang out. Like that's where I would go spend my lunch most of the time. But yeah, so I've always been an introvert.
yeah.
I've never been a part of the like huge crowd, never went to parties or anything like that, wasn't even invited, wasn't even aware of that scene going on at my high school. God kept me very sheltered and removed from all of that, for which I'm grateful. And then, like I said, Bill and I met in high school through a mutual friend that I went to church with and he went to school with.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we met, became really close friends really fast. Um, and about a year after that, started dating and were each other's first and only everything. We knew within the first 6 months of dating that we eventually wanted to get married, and
Oh,
that
wow.
never changed or wavered.
In high school,
Um,
huh?
yeah, high school.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
really quick. I'm sorry. Once again, really quick before we get to it, we're gonna get to there. So, because you said in high school is when your dad passed away,
yeah,
or right?
my junior year of high school.
So let me ask you this: before that happened, did you? I'm pretty sure you did, but did you make those attempts to try to reconcile and try to have a relationship with him, or you just kind of
Oh
by
yeah.
this point
That
you didn't, you tried?
I was doing that my whole life. He would get frustrated and mad at me because as we would be driving from here to the middle of California, Central California, where he lived, it was about a 4-hour drive. Like on those drives to and from, I'd be like trying to talk to him about God, trying to share scripture with him, and he would tell me to stop and to not talk about that. I
Oh
remember
man!
trying to do the same thing with my sister, like giving her a Bible and sharing with her about God, and she was open to it and receptive to it until my dad found out and they took her Bible away and wouldn't let me talk
Wow!
to her about God anymore. Yeah, so he went through some stuff with his parents that as a young man, that made him very angry at God. And because he grew up in a Christian home too, but as a young adult, he became very angry at God, turned his back on God. And I remember asking him at one point, um, wanting to know more, asking him to tell me what happened and all of that. And he said that I was too young to have that conversation, and that when I turned 18, I could ask him anything I wanted and he would answer openly and honestly. And if after that I never wanted to talk to him again, he'd understand. And I was completely taken aback. I was maybe 15, maybe at that point. And I told him, Dad, there's nothing you could tell me that would make me not love you and not want to talk to you anymore. Like that's just not possible. You're my dad. I love you. And he's like, okay, well, when you're 18, we can have that conversation. Okay. So time went on. And I remember probably when I was about 16, um, I wrote him a letter about, faith and God, and just begging him to turn back to God and to come back to faith. I don't know if he ever opened it. I don't know if he ever read it. He never responded to it. And telling him how much I wanted a relationship with him, how much I wanted to be close to him, and all of that. Never responded. I don't know if it had any impact on him. And then he died in a plane crash my junior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
He had his pilot's license. He had a little four-seater Cessna that he'd take out flying. And one day he went up and never picked up my sister at school like he was supposed to that day. And the next morning they found the wreckage of the crash. He had been clearly trying to land, and in the process crashed into some guide wires and didn't make it. So that was really, really hard. And I let's see, not in high school, but like at the beginning of college, freshman year of college, I started going through a period of depression because I hadn't completely dealt with all of my grief from losing him, and the loss of hope for that reconciliation and building the relationship that I always wanted, um, and all of that. But again, God saw me through all of that. He was with me,
Yeah.
and always put the right people in my life. So
So I'm glad you brought up the depression. That's something that I know I struggled with for 3 years, and our generation is just, struggling with that. So walk me through from when your dad died to you said that in your college years you were,
mhm.
all right. So from your father's death to that time of depression, tell me how your life changed. Um, what did you do to get through it? Because I think most people nowadays, they run to alcohol, they run to drugs, they run to people cut themselves, and people, just all kinds of crazy stuff that I'm thankful God stopped me from doing it, but
Yeah.
I witnessed it with my kids. I witnessed it with other people. Um, I think you know the story about my brother, right? When he
Mhm.
passed away, and I know that, like for example, his depression, he went to food, and because of the food, gaining all this weight, he died on
Right.
his sleep, right? So depression is something that it's near and dear to me because I lost my brother because of that. I went through it, and my kids went through it, and so how did you deal with it? What did you do? Because I know it was hard. Were you ever tempted to get mad at God? Were you ever tempted to turn your back on Him, or just, I don't know, like just rebel because you were so angry? Like walk us through that difficult phase.
I wasn't ever tempted to turn away from God. I wasn't tempted to go to the things that I knew would be bad. And in recent years, I've come to believe that my faith and the strength and character of it is part of my spiritual gifting,
Mhm.
because given everything that I've been through, I should have been mad at God. I should have not been able to understand how he's a good and loving father. I should have, had a hard time with all of these things, and I never have. And I think that that's from God. My faith is a gift from God that got me through all of that. I started realizing that I was struggling with depression during my freshman year in college. I majored in psychology, and I was going through my, Psych 101 intro class, and we got to the chapter on depression and the chemical changes that happen in the brain when it goes on, over a certain period of time, and all of those types of things. And I had started to feel it, and it came on slowly. It was, feeling low for a little while, during a day, but talking to Bill or hanging out with friends, would kind of lift me up out of it and I'd be okay again. But the more time went on, the longer those periods of feeling low got, and the harder it got to pull myself up or to be pulled up out of them, until it got to the point where I would get sad or depressed during the day, and it would just last all day. I would go to bed feeling that way, and then I'd wake up the next morning feeling that way, and nothing seemed to help anymore. I I started having feelings of, not that I ever had any plan or anything, but just that feeling of I'd be better off not being here anymore.
Yeah.
God, why don't you just
Yeah.
take me? And
Yep. 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 Yep.
the
Yep.
only person that I told, the only person that knew how deep it got was Bill. He was the only one I felt comfortable telling that that's how low I got. And so when we started going through all of that, info in my psych class, that's what made me realize, okay, this is something that I need help with. And so I went to talk to my professor, who was also my advisor and the head of the whole psych department. And he set me up with a counselor at the counseling session on campus, because they have a master's program for marriage and family therapy. And so they have students who do their internship there. And even after they graduate, like, they have some interns come and work there too, still do to this day. But I started going to therapy, and it was, Christian biblical based therapy. So it wasn't just the psychology aspect, it was, God and the Bible as well. And I did that for year and a half, maybe. Did some really intense, hard work over not just the grief, over losing my dad, but over the childhood that I didn't get to have because he wasn't what I needed. The loss of the relationship that I'm not going to get to have for the rest of my life anymore because he's no longer here to do and be my dad, and that hope of change and reconciliation was gone. And that really helped. The work that I did there, that the counselor that I was set up with, was really good and a perfect fit for me. Um, and So when I ended therapy, when I got to a place where I felt like, okay, I'm good, I can do this on my own now. I wrote a letter to my dad, and, just saying goodbye, because that's something I never got to do. And Bill drove me to the gravesite where he was buried, and I read it to him, cried and prayed. And I remember driving home from that, just all of this weight and this burden was lifted off of my shoulders. I felt light and free again for the first time in, I don't remember how long. And since then, like, obviously my life hasn't been perfect. Nothing's ever completely easy, but it's been good. And I haven't dealt with depression on that level since then.
How long would you say that depression phase lasted you?
It was probably, by the time I realized that that's what it was and was able to identify it and put a name to it, it had probably already been months. So in total, maybe a couple of years.
No. Okay. So how did your relationship with God during this time change? Like, what did you do different prior at that during that time prior to like before? Did you did you find yourself getting closer to Him, or were you kind of hesitant? Like, what? Because obviously you had counselors and you put in the work to get you through this. But what I want to know is, did anything change for the good or bad during those few years with God? What did you do different or the same? Or what I want to hear is I want people to understand that God is the only one who's gonna help us through these tough times, not
Yeah.
drugs, alcohol, or anybody else. I want to know, what did you do specifically? Like, I know what I did, I know what others have done, but what did you do specifically with your relationship with God to eventually get out of it?
I made sure that I was consistent in my Bible reading, not, just devotionals where there's a little bit of scripture and a nice feel good story, but like reading the word
Yeah.
and like, taking notes and journaling about it and writing out my prayers to God and just um continuing to just take everything to him and pour my heart out to him and intentionally believing his promises and what he tells us in scripture, who he is, what he's done for us, what he continues to do, the blessings that believers have, the way that the Holy Spirit works in our life. He's our comforter and our teacher, and just intentionally believing and resting in that. Um and for me, writing has always been a big part of how I deal with stuff, how I process. Journaling, like I said, writing out my prayers, even if it felt like I was writing the same thing every day, even if, like, I just kept doing it. And because that helps my brain stay focused and not get distracted. And yeah, that's what worked for me.
Okay. Let's switch to something more positive, or well, it's gonna be kind of bad towards the end, but let's talk about Bill, marriage. Tell me, oh my god, we're already 33 minutes. All right, so tell me, like, again, real quick, how you guys met, and like, how did you know that he was the one? And then just summarize your
Okay,
marriage.
first of all, that whole concept of the one is absolutely bogus. There's no such thing. Nobody
Well,
is
you know
perfect.
what I mean. You know what I mean. Like, it's just, I mean,
Yeah.
well, you probably don't have the experience I do, but I mean, you can tell right off the bat, like on a date, like, nah, definitely not this person. Not getting a second call after this. But you can kind of tell, like, well, you know what? There's potential, and then there's not. But it
You
kind of
know,
seemed like you quickly already in high school already kind of knew that, and I was like,
oh,
wow,
he knew before me. He knew when he
oh
met me,
man,
he
love
said
at
that
first
he
sight,
wanted to marry me. That
love
that was
at
his
first
story.
sight.
That was his story, not for me. Like
Of
I said,
course.
we became friends first. We just clicked as friends. I felt safe with him. I felt like I knew I could trust him. He would always be there for me when I needed. He was a listening ear. He was always kind and caring. Um, but my brain wasn't even thinking about romantic relationships at
Mhm.
that point. Um, because before we met, I had seen my best friend, who was just a little bit older than me, start to date and, go from one relationship to another, even in high school. And at
Sounds like
first,
me.
I kind of had that feeling of like missing out. Like, this is the part of life I'm not participating in. Like, should I be? What's going on? Is there something wrong with me that guys aren't interested in me? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, I don't want that. I don't want a string of broken relationships coming into my marriage. I don't want all that
Yeah.
baggage. And I read, and I should have the reference memorized, but I don't. But I read in Psalms, I think, where it says that that when we focus on God, He will make the desires of our heart match with His desires and His plan for us.
Yeah.
And so I told God, okay, God, I want to only ever date one person. I want the person that I date first to be the person that you want me to marry. I don't want to have, a string of broken relationships. I don't want to go through the whole dating rigmarole. So if I have to wait until college or after to meet my husband and to be able to start dating and do all the things, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Please just protect me from this. And and I stayed true to that. I just focused on God and church and my friendships and having fun with my friends, things that you're supposed to do in high school. And then Bill and I met and became good friends. And one summer, my best friend came with us on a trip and proposed the thought or the idea of Bill and I going on a date because I guess he had talked to her about how he felt about me. And and it's like a switch flipped in my brain from that moment on, and I couldn't start picturing what that would be like. And it was still a few months out from that before we actually started dating, but that's kind of how it all started. Um,
Okay. Now let's
yeah,
fast forward to the marriage part. Like, how did
yeah.
you know? Like, how did that go? How did he propose? And how did all that happen?
Oh gosh, you're making me go back. How is it that I'm blanking on this? I was just okay, I remember now. Yeah. He took me to medieval times. He was always such a good listener. One of the many, many things I had shared with him is that I loved medieval times and I had always wanted to be like they'll do you can pay to like have them do a ceremony before you go in for the show where they knight you or dub a lady of the court. And I told him how I'd always wanted to have that done. And so when he proposed, we went to medieval times and he, had that done for me. And as I was getting ready to turn and walk off the little platform stage where they did that afterwards, the guy was like, nope, stay. And then Bill started walking up and got down on one knee and brought out the ring and all of that in front of the whole crowd.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, so of course I said yes, and everybody was cheering. And we went in and watched the show, and we had the best seats in the house, like down in front. And they'll do like announcements for birthdays or anniversaries or whatever before the show starts. The king will. And so they, announced that we were celebrating our engagement and all that jazz. Yeah, it was pretty spectacular.
Okay, cool. So we're running out of time. So many things I want to ask. All right, tell me really quick. Summarize what were the most beautiful moments or things that you learned while you were married, and what were some of the difficult things that if in the future you ever do get married again, you probably gonna try to like not make the same mistake or learn from it or whatever. Like some marriage tips, basically.
Yeah.
No, so what?
The
Yeah,
the
like people like
best
me, I have no idea what the beauty of marriage. Honestly, I
yeah.
don't. I just know the bad stuff. So, what? Tell me what a Christian marriage looks like and the beauty of it. You know, from your
Obviously, the
perspective.
most important thing is keeping God your center and your foundation, praying together, studying the Bible together, going to church together, being involved in God's community together. Those are key and foundational. But one of the best things outside of that that we both did was learning how to manage conflict well, learning how to fight fair, so to speak. For anybody who's interested, John Gottman has done some great research on this. And again, this started before we got married, when I was going through my marriage and family class in my undergrad program in college, when, you know, we were dating and I'd bring stuff home to talk to him about. But being intentional in how you handle conflict and learning to do that well and in a healthy way, um, was that that process, and learning to do that well bore fruit for our entire marriage. And like, we could be in the middle of a fight and reach across and grab each other's hands and say, "Hey, I still love you." You know, we and for me, one of the hardest things for me was to learn to give him space, to learn to give him time to go and cool off, because men and women tend to process things very differently, and there's a physiological reaction that happens when you get angry that prevents you from being able to think clearly about whatever you're talking about. And I'm the typical, I want to fix it now. Let's work this out right now. And he was very much that I need to be away. I need to think about it and process it first and then come back and talk about it. So I had to learn how to give him that space. And he was always good about coming back when he said he would. And so learning what each other needed in the moment, how to recognize that and be gracious enough to give that to each other, and then to stay focused on the issue, to not bring up past events, to not go into personal attacks, and how to just never forget the relationship. We're on the same side. If I'm losing, he's losing. If he's losing, I'm losing. It's us with God against whatever the problem is, against the rest of the world, against whatever we're going through, whether it's something between us, whether it's from outside circumstances being difficult and stressful and hard, whether it's, family putting pressure on one or the other of us for something. Um, it was always the two of us together,
Yeah.
and never losing sight of that, um, and of our relationship and of what we meant to each other.
Okay. And what would you say? From how many years were you married?
We were married almost 15 and a half. We got married in 2006, April 2006, and he died in July 2021.
All right. I don't want to hash those memories again, so I'm not gonna
Sure.
talk about his passing. But obviously that affected you, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the what you did, like when your father passed away, when your husband passed away, I'm assuming the same thing happened, right? You stayed faithful to God,
Yeah.
praying. So basically, God was the source of your comfort during your hard times in life. You didn't go
Absolutely.
out to, you didn't run to men, you didn't run to drugs and alcohol to fill that void and pain in your heart. It was always God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it still is. I still have hard days. I'm grateful now that I have more good days than bad days now. I have my joy back. I'm learning what it means and looks like to be happy by myself, which is something I've never had to do, because I always either had my family or him, and both and I still have my family. I still have good friends. God is good in that way. But losing my partner, my best friend, he was the most solid, tangible expression of God's love to me in my life that I've ever experienced. And the intimacy and the beauty of and fulfillment of marriage when it's done God's way is uncomparable to any other relationship. So losing that has been the most difficult thing by far in my life. And especially at the beginning, there were lots of days where all I could do was lay down in my bed and cry and call out to God. I couldn't even pray. I didn't have words even to pray. I just would say God's name and beg for his help. And he's always been faithful every single step of the way.
Yeah. So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm assuming you one day would want to get remarried, right?
Absolutely.
Now,
What I say is that Bill loved me so well that I know for sure that I want to be married again.
right.
He also set the bar incredibly high,
Right. So,
you know,
which is
for
what we're gonna get to now. So you're one of the blessed people to actually have married a godly man and experience what the joy of what marriage should be.
yeah.
Not too many of us are at that level, or it's going to be difficult to probably find somebody like that. Now, but what I want to know is, from your experience with him, moving forward in trying to date or find a potential husband. Obviously, you're still single, so so
It's also only been 3 years, so
right.
I
So
mean,
yeah, no, I get it. Because that bar is set really high. The whoever you've talked to or in the past, um, how do I ask this?
just say it.
No, I'm trying to find the right words here. Like, what's been the difficult part right now uh, in your dating or trying to find a potential new husband? What would you say are like the main issues?
Well, I tried the whole online thing,
Oh
which
man,
didn't work for me.
yeah,
Um, and again, it goes back to the best foundation for a good, healthy, loving relationship really is friendship. I still
yeah,
believe
yeah,
that. So, and the experiences that I've had in relationships and dating since I've started putting myself out there in that world again, um, has been questionable at best. And there have been some pretty bad experiences too. Um, and for me, it just boils down to, again, that same desire and cry of my heart as a teenager before ever even starting to date. God, I
mm,
want to do this your way.
yeah,
I I want to invest my time and energy into the person that you want me to be with, into a person who's a godly man, who's going to be a good match for me, who I will be able to be a good partner for. Um, and so protect me from anything else. And I really believe that for me, the path forward is just staying involved in godly community, at church and wherever else I find that, putting myself out there where, in ways that I'm available to be found, for lack of a better way of saying it, and just focusing on building friendships with people.
yeah,
And I hope and I pray that God brings somebody along and that he chooses to bless me in that way again. But finding that can't be the focus of my life.
right,
Right now, the
right,
focus is being content in my relationship with God and
yeah,
in the community and family and friends that he's placed in my life, and investing in those, and trusting that if it's meant to happen again, if it's something, you know, that he's going to choose to bless me with, it'll happen without my looking for it and trying to find it, because that clearly didn't work for me. And I'm
yeah,
not interested in racking up more bad experiences.
yeah. I feel you.
So
Yeah,
I I'm just learning, like I said, learning how to be happy and how to stay joyful and grateful, and trust God, trust his timing, trust his plan. As hard as the waiting is sometimes, as much as this is something that I deeply, deeply want to be blessed with again, I have to leave it in his plans and trust that if it's not if it doesn't happen again, he's going to bring joy and fulfillment and happiness in other ways. Because he's a good God. He loves us and takes care of us and meets our needs. And
Yeah.
that's what I cling to.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: based on the what's gone on in your life, the thing with your dad, and not having that, everything you've encountered in life, and the death of your husband. Can you say in your heart that right now at this point in your life you are 100% ready to enter into that covenant again with somebody, or do you think? Remember, like I was telling you with the Doug's marriage class, I was like, oh no, 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 not for me. This is just me, but do you feel in your heart that you're 100% ready to go, or do you think there's still maybe a little bit of growing you might want to have to do, or what?
I do think that I started trying to date too soon. I thought I was ready, but I think that was more pushing myself out of my loneliness and my desire to find that relationship again. And I think there is still some healing there that needs to be done, and it's happening, as I engage in community and like I said, just invest more in friendships and community, especially at church.
Yeah,
I that healing's happening in relationship with other people. So to a certain extent, it's something I can work on my own, and I am, and I do. But there's a lot of it that just happens in relationship with other people and sharing my story with other people and letting that minister to them as their willingness to hear and be there for me ministers to me. Um, and like right now, I'm just trusting God to know when I'm ready, and I'm going to keep working on living for Him as best I can in the meantime,
yeah.
whatever that looks like.
Okay. All right, we have a few minutes left, so I want to end on two little things. So I only do this with I've only done this on my interview, and you watched Dale's interview, did you?
Yeah, I did.
All right, so you shouldn't be surprised when I ask this. So can you briefly tell us your Doug Gooden era? How'd you know? How'd you how did you get to know him? What did how has he helped you? Like, but tell me your experience with good old Doug. You know he's gonna watch
Well,
this.
you're the one that introduced me to his ministry,
Yeah.
which has been an incredible blessing. I think I love the way that he walks us through scripture, that he stays in context, in the text that we're studying and not bringing in a whole bunch of outside things. He has a gift for being able to explain and draw out what's there and helping us to fight against our presuppositions that
Yeah.
everybody has about what it already means. And unlike most of the people that seem to find him and benefit from his ministry, I've never really been a part of the Reformed camp. Like I've
Oh,
listened to people who are, I've heard those teachings, like I'm aware of what that
man.
all is, but I've never been like hardcore in it myself.
Woo.
Um
That's a
and
blessing. I'm gonna tell you that right now. As a former one, that's a blessing. No, there's some good brothers and sisters there. It's just
yeah.
they're
So I haven't had the same struggles as far as thinking something's there when it's not,
yeah,
or that
yeah.
kind of thing. Um, but there are parts of the Bible that I've had a hard time understanding, like lots of people. I struggle with the prophets, I struggle with
Oh
Revelation.
man,
Um,
that was
and
one of the classes in NCST when we went through the prophets. Oh, that was the hardest one.
I've recently been going through his teaching on Isaiah,
Yeah,
and I'm understanding that better than I ever have before. So yeah, he's really great.
you know what he's good at too? Rebuking you. Oh, me. He's talking about me. Man, I wish I would have saved some of those emails. I was like, man, this guy is mean.
All of us
Yeah,
need that from time to time
yeah,
on
yeah.
certain issues.
Yeah, now I don't even bother anymore trying to debate him because I'm gonna get my butt kicked. But yeah, no, he's been an inspiration. That's why I don't read too many people. I don't follow too many teachers. I don't recommend too many, but definitely he's one that I would. Because if it wasn't for, I'm sorry, give me one second. If it wasn't for sitting under his teaching, I'd probably still be an angry Reformed Baptist,
Yeah, there
systematic
aren't
theology. Yeah.
too many teachers out there that I follow or would recommend myself. He's one of them. Mike Winger is another. They're probably about the only two that, like, if I'm trying, if I need to understand something, or if somebody says something and I want to help them understand or learn, I will point them in those two directions. And the Bible, of course, but as far as like not knowing what's there or not understanding what's there, Mike Winger and Doug Gooden are the directions that I point people.
Okay, cool. All right. So, lastly, just any last minute advice for anyone who's been through some of the stuff that you've been through. Anybody? I mean, but think a lot of people have gone through depression, or not having a good relationship with parents, or just whatever your struggles were in life. Any last minute advice for anybody who have might have shared in similar things that
There
you
is
experienced?
power in knowing and understanding that grief and joy can coexist side by side. Um, we tend to think, people in general tend to think things are all bad or all good. Um, but being able to hold together that two opposites can coexist, that there can be tension there, and that it's okay and good, is something that's really helped me. And also that nothing that we feel or go through is going to last forever. Um, Going to the scripture and letting the Bible inform and instruct our feelings rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And for me, just the hope of the next life to come, King Jesus is on the throne, as Doug always says, and
Good
he's
old
coming
Doug.
back. And in the meantime, he's building his kingdom. And
Yeah.
even if, because there are people in this world that don't get to experience a whole lot of good in this life. And that's a reality that we have to be aware of, when as we meet people and talk to people. And no matter what your experience in this life is, if you're trusting in Jesus and if you're faithful to the end and you run your race faithfully, there is good life on the other side of this. And we're going to get to live with Jesus forever and do his work forever and see heaven and earth restored.
Yeah.
And that provided me with so much comfort and hope and peace in my struggles.
And that's what the world needs right now.
Yeah.
Especially the generation of mental illness and depression and everything is crazy. That's what it is. That's what got me through my depression, and that's what got my mom through when my brother died. It was God.
Yeah.
It was God. But all right. Thank you. Ooh, right on the money, the hour mark. All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I'm sure this will be beneficial to those who watch it. So thank you, and
You're
have a
welcome.
blessed day.
I hope it is. You too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.